Hello, and welcome to another episode of Unshackled for Life. We're unlocking prosperity and liberating wealth. And I'm your host, John Green. And in today's episode, everybody, the topic is debt decimation, how to pay off debt fast. Let's get into today's episode. All right, welcome back to another episode of Unshackled for Life, where we are unlocking prosperity and liberating wealth. I'm your host, John Green. I'm a financial coach, educator, and someone who's lived through some of the stress, the shame, and the suffocating weight of consumer debt. Today's episode is called Debt Decimation, how to pay off debt fast. And what we're going to do, we're going to walk through and talk about two of the most popular payoff strategies, the Debt Snowball and the Debt Avalanche. And more importantly, we're going to talk about the mindset behind each one. It's important to understand that getting out of debt is not just a math problem, it's also a behavioral transformation. And that's what we try to focus on here at Unshackled for Life. I'm going to be using, as an example today, I'm going to introduce you to my made-up imaginary friend, Juanito. And we'll use him to kind of stand in for the average American who's carrying multiple forms of debt. All right. His story is going to help you see exactly how each method works, both mathematically and psychologically. So that way you can then choose which one fits you and your personality the best. If you're listening to today's podcast, I would strongly encourage you, to go back and watch the YouTube episode of this, because there's going to be a lot of numbers I throw out today, and it may be kind of hard to follow along. So, I'll still speak through the different numbers, but the visuals that are on the YouTube channel, that might be, a little more beneficial, especially if you're a visual learner. Now, by the end of today's episode, you should be able to walk away with which method between the Debt Snowball and Debt Avalanche is going to fit your personality the best. All right. And you'll also walk away with some motivation and information to start eliminating debt today. Let's start with something that some people don't realize. Debt is a math problem, but staying in debt is more of a psychological problem. If debt payoff were purely mathematical, everyone would choose the fastest, cheapest, most efficient method, and they would stick to it. But that's not really how us humans work. We can be emotional. We can find ourselves being discouraged or distracted. We can easily lose momentum and maybe even get overwhelmed. Debt, it's attached to emotions such as stress, shame, regret, fear, avoidance, and sometimes even hopelessness. What I want you to understand is, debt, it's not just about the numbers. It's also tied to the behavior, the beliefs, and the momentum that's attached to it, especially when you're trying to get out of debt. For today's purposes, one thing, I want to share with you is one reason why the name of this is Unshackled. So when I think of debt, I think of it kind of as a cage with multiple locks on it. Here at Unshackled for Life, the goal is to give you keys so that you can start unlocking those locks. And then that way you can unlock prosperity and liberate wealth. That's where that tagline comes from. What I need you guys to understand today, the real challenge isn't knowing how to pay off debt. It's how to stay motivated long enough to finish that journey. It's why choosing the right payoff method matters. It's not about being smart. It's about doing what's most effective for you. Let me introduce you to our friend Juanito. All right. So Juanito, he's going to be like I said, he's like our stand-in example for today's discussion about paying off debt. So just to introduce you to him, Juanito is 32 years old. He earns a modest household income and he carries a very typical American debt load. All right. Here's what his monthly life looks like. For his living expenses, he pays rent. His rent's about $1,500 a month. His car payment is $550. Utilities and internet, somewhere around $250. Groceries, $450. Gas and transportation, $200. His car insurance is tied into that. And he has about $300 that he usually spends on miscellaneous things, whether that's like his bowling league or his weekly night out with the fellas, whatever it is. All right. His total living expenses come up to $3,250 a month. His income, he's bringing home about $4,500 a month, and that leaves him $1,250 to help pay off his debts. Let's now talk about his debts. First debts we're going to talk about are his credit cards. So Juanito he has 3 credit cards. One of them it has a $1,200 balance, 24% interest rate, and his minimum payment is $35. His second credit card, the balance is $3,800, 22% interest rate, $95 minimum payment. And his third credit card, this one has a balance of $6,500. Interest rate is the highest at 26%. And his minimum payment here is $160. Juanito also carries student loans. Now remember, he's 32. He's 32 years old, so he's had a chance to pay off some of his loans. So we're going to say that his balance is $1,800. The average American student loan debt somewhere around $3,700. I'm sorry, $37,000. All right, but like I said, Juanito, he's had some time to start paying into it, so he only owes $18,000. It has a low interest rate of 5.5%, and his monthly payment for student loans is $210. And the last thing he has here, he has a personal loan that he took out, $10,000. It has a 10% interest rate, and his minimum payment is $220. So that leaves him a total debt of $39,500. His minimum payments each month total up to $720. Out of that $1,250 that he has to pay off debt, he still has an extra $530 that he wants to put towards getting out of debt. I want to take a break real quick, kind of talk about what might separate me from, let's say, a Dave Ramsey. You may notice that I did not include the car payment. Couple of reasons there. Yes, car payments, a car note is debt. It might be considered, but in Juanito's case, I'm not really looking at it because by the time we pay off everything, that car note, if he just continues making his normal car note payment, his car will also be paid off in this time frame. All right. I did not include the car note again because one thing I will do with you as a financial coach is, sit down and kind of plot out how many months is going to take to pay off everything. And the car in this situation, it'll be paid off by the time everything is done here. Let's say Juanito had just bought a new car. If he had just bought a new car and, he was upside down on that car, then chances are by the end of the credit card payoff, he'll probably still have some money that he can put towards his car note as well to kind of eliminate that debt. All right. But I chose not to include it here because I know that the car will be paid off by the time we finish this entire process. Now that we know his income and his debts, we can now start talking about how Juanito's going to pay off this debt. So there's 2 main routes that most financial coaches and most people recommend. And we have the Debt Snowball and the Avalanche method. So I'm going to start with the Debt Snowball. All right. And I call this the psychological method because this one is about changing behavior, and it really brings in some psychological motivators that'll help push you through your debt elimination process. The debt snowball, this approach was popularized by financial expert Dave Ramsey, but it's a method that anyone can use. He doesn't really own the rights to the words debt snowball, but he definitely made it famous, and I can tell you it works. So this is the way it works. For the debt snowball method, you're going to list your debts from the smallest balance to the largest balance. All right. We're not looking at interest rates here. You're going to pay minimums on everything, and you're going to throw all of your extra money towards whatever the smallest debt is first. Once that debt is gone, you'll then use the money that was going to that first debt, and now you're going to add that to your second debt, to your second smallest debt. All right. When that one's paid, you go to the next one. So it's kind of like, like a snowball. When you think about a snowball sitting on a mountain, you got a small snowball. As it starts rolling, it starts picking up snow, starts picking up momentum thanks to gravity, and it gets larger and larger, and it starts to really barrel down the mountainside. Why does this method work psychologically? Well, you really get quick wins. By aiming for the smallest debt, you can usually quickly pay that one off within a few months. And once that one is done, you get to move to the next one. And what ends up happening is once you pay off one debt, you start to build confidence, you'll start to build momentum, and you'll stay engaged as you start paying off these different debts. All right. Now, mathematically, it's still, it also works mathematically, because people who use the snowball method, they're more likely to finish their debt payoff plan because they are staying motivated. And finishing your debt payoff, it'll save more money than quitting a mathematically perfect plan halfway through. The snowball, it's kind of like learning to run by taking short jogs and then walking. All right, you're going to build your endurance over time. If we're looking at Juanito's bills, his lowest debt is credit card number 1. All right. Second lowest is credit card number 2. And as I said, credit card number 3 had $6,500. That was the most expensive credit card. And then he had his $10,000 personal loan, and then his $18,000 student loan. So what this is going to look like, this is what his timeline is going to look like. Remember he's going to apply that $530 towards that first one, and he's going to actually have that first bill is going to be paid off in less than 3 months. All right. He's going to have that joker paid off in less than 3 months. Really, it's going to be more like 2 months. That emotional impact is going to be huge, because he's going to, within 2 months, he's going to see one of those debts completely disappear. That would be very motivating. I mean, just imagine, thinking about all of your debts. What would it feel like to remove one of them? So now that he has $565 a month extra in his pocket, he can apply that to the $125 that he was paying on his second credit card. And then he's going to have that one paid off in about 6 months. All right. So 6 months later, he already has that one down. He's then going to take that money. He's going to roll over that $660 he was paying. He's going to add that to the $200 that he was paying for the other one, for the third credit card. And 8 months later, so really we're talking less than a year and a half later from when he started, he has now paid off all 3 of his credit cards. Now he can focus on that $10,000 personal loan. Now he has over $1,000 a month that he can apply towards that one. That one's going to be paid off in less than 10 months. All right. And then debt number 5, that $18,000 debt that he had, that'll be paid off in a little over a year from then. And basically he's going to have everything paid off in about 41 months. All right. 41 months. That's less than 3.5 years. And the total interest that he paid would have been about $6,650. All right. So the reason that the snowball works for Juanito is going to give him some quick wins. It's going to allow him to build some confidence as he goes. And he's also going to build motivation, all right, to stay in it, to continue paying it off. Let's go to the other side, the debt avalanche. So the debt avalanche, this is the mathematical method. The way that this one works, instead of listing your debts from lowest to highest, we're actually going to look at the interest rates. So we're going to bring in the debt that has the highest interest rate, and we're going to list all the way to the lowest interest rate. Other than that, everything else pretty much works the same. So you're going to start paying minimums on everything, and you're going to throw any extra money towards the debt with the highest interest rate first. All right. Once that one is gone, you'll move on to the next highest interest rate. That the avalanche method is more about money. It's more about dollars and cents. You're trying to eliminate your debt by paying the least amount of money. This is the method that you'd want to, that you would want to choose. It saves you the most money on interest. It'll get you out of debt faster on paper, but not necessarily always in real life. And it's usually the most efficient method. The problem with this method and why some people struggle with it, the highest interest debt can sometimes be the largest debt. And if that is the case, that's going to take a long time, months, maybe even years, before you can see a win from paying off one of the debts. A lot of times as humans, because we are emotional creatures, the motivation of having a quick win is usually more beneficial. The avalanche, this is kind of like going to the gym and only doing the hardest workout every single day. Now, it's going to give you, it's the most efficient. It's probably going to give you the most gains, but it's not always the most sustainable. All right. You might burn out and become unmotivated. So for Juanito, highest interest rate is that big credit card he has. The second highest interest rate is credit card number 1 with the low balance. And then credit card number 2 is number 3. The personal loan with its 10% interest rate, and then the student loans would be last with the 5.5%. Here's the timeline. So I want you to remember, in the previous example, Juanito was able to pay off that first credit card number 1. He was able to pay that off within 2 months. In this situation, Juanito's going to pay $690 a month towards that third credit card he has. It's going to take him 10 months to pay that off. 10 months versus 2 months. Do you kind of see where the snowball might be slightly more advantageous? After paying off that one, he now has a little more money to put towards debt number 2, which is that low credit card, the lowest credit card. And it's going to take him about 2 months to pay off that credit card. So we're 12 months in, and now he has 2 of his debts paid off. Debt number 3, that third credit card, that'll be paid off 5 months later. And as you can see, debt number 4 here, again, by the time he gets to debt number 4, he has an extra, he's putting over $1,000 onto that fourth debt. That's going to take him a little, about 10 months more. And then debt number 5, that $18,000 that he had on student loans, that'll take up to another 15 months to pay off. This ends up taking him 42 months to pay everything off. And his interest, the total interest that he would have paid by that time, even though it took a month longer, the interest would be, it actually saved him about $600 a month. I'm sorry, about $600 in interest. So you'll see that it only cost him $6,050 versus the $6,650 that was paid for the snowball. Which method do you think is better? Now that we've seen both of Juanito, we've seen how this works out for Juanito. And, one thing I want to be very clear and transparent about is this is not going to be the same timeline for you. All right. That this is Juanito's situation, which is going to be completely different from your situation. Here's the conclusion that we should draw. Based on the example here, the snowball is faster for Juanito by about 1 month. All right. 41 months versus 42 months. But it's going to cost him about $600 more in interest. The avalanche method is going to save him $600 more. It's going to save him that $600 in interest, but it's going to take 1 month longer, which isn't much. If Juanito needed, if it depends on what he needs. If Juanito needs motivation and momentum, quick wins, so that he can finally accomplish his goal, then the snowball method is going to be what would best benefit him. But if Juanito is more focused on being, financially efficient, and he wants to optimize by paying the least interest, then the Avalanche would be his choice. At the end of the day, listeners, the best method is whichever one you're going to stick with. Most people who try the Avalanche method, they do quit early because it takes too long to feel like you won, to feel like you've done anything, right? But most people do finish with the snowball because the early wins, they start to build belief. And then once you have belief, you have some motivation. And I speak from experience with the snowball method. So when I started my journey, when I really got focused on it years ago, I was reading Dave Ramsey and Financial Peace. So I was using his baby steps method. And when it came to the debt snowball, man, those early wins were amazing. I felt great. Felt great to cut up credit cards and and to see those balances go to zero. That was fun. And the snowball, it definitely worked for my wife and I. Those small wins create big freedom. All right. And that's what we're searching for here at Unshackled for Life. I want you to feel free from debt and feel what it's like to build wealth and be in charge of your finances. That's what it's about. It's the belief that's going to help get people out of debt, not always the math. If you're motivated by progress, momentum, small wins, then choose the snowball. I realize, not everyone's going to be like me. So that's understandable. But if you're more motivated by efficiency, logic, and saving money, then the Avalanche. That's your method of choice. It's not really about, most people don't really need a perfect plan. It's like we all know that we need to get out of debt and pay off debt, right? Like that's understood. What you need, though, instead of the perfect plan, you just need the plan that's going to keep you emotionally invested to where you actually finish the journey. Speaking of the journey, I need you to understand paying off debt. I know I called it debt decimation, like you're going to just squash it real quick. That's not what happens. Debt payoff is a marathon. All right. Your mindset is the fuel, your method, either the avalanche or the snowball. That's going to be your vehicle. And then your consistency, that's the engine that'll keep you motivated, keep you moving forward, that gets you to the finish line. All right. So choose the method that'll keep you moving. I've got some questions. If you're still not sure which method is best for you, I'll throw out some questions to help you choose which one best fits your personality. First question: do you get discouraged easily? If the answer is yes, the debt snowball is your method. You will definitely get quick wins with the snowball. I am someone, hate to admit it, I've been known to get discouraged easily. All right. I go to the gym and then, feel great, do it for a couple of weeks. And then I don't know, I just get discouraged because I don't see any changes. So then I quit. So, same thing with paying off debt. I've went early on when I was trying to pay off debt on my own without really having a plan. It just never really got going. Question number 2: do you love efficiency and optimization? Do you love everything to be streamlined and, are you like really into spreadsheets and numbers and you want to make sure that you are not giving, you're not putting any extra money towards this debt that you need to? If that's the case, Avalanche. Third question: do you have one massive debt that just feels impossible? If so, if there's just like one debt that just kind of presses down on you and just holds you down worse than the others, you probably want to consider the snowball method, because you'll want to go into, if you think of it kind of as a battle, if that debt is so large, it's going to be your last one on the debt snowball. And you'll want some momentum before you try to tackle that beast of a debt. So the snowball method might be best because you're saving that big one for last. And after you've had so many wins, you'll be able to hit that beast with, with a lot of money. And that might be the motivation, it might be the way that gets you to that last final debt. Kind of consider it like a final boss in a video game. All right. Snowball might be your better method. Truth be told, you can combine these methods. All right. You can start with a snowball to build your motivation, and then you can start to switch it up to where you start, once you feel comfortable, you might want to switch to the highest interest rate, because once you kind of get that motivation, start to feel different, you'll start to move different, and you'll look at that at the highest interest rate is the one that's oppressing you the most, and you can switch it up. It's all good. All right. The important thing is you pay off the debt and get it out of the way. Last thing I want to give you today, I want to give you some action steps to get you started today. These are some action steps to start your debt decimation journey today. Step number 1, list all of your debts. You have to look at them. You have to put it on paper and see what exactly it is that you owe. So list out all of your debts. Don't worry about putting them in order just yet, but just list them out. All right. Then step number 2, you're going to choose which method you want to use. At the end of this, do you feel like a debt snowball person, or do you feel like a debt avalanche person? Once you have made your choice, you'll be able to go back to your list and put them in the appropriate order. Remember, debt snowball, you're putting them in order from smallest amount, smallest balance to largest balance. Debt avalanche, you're looking at those interest rates and you're putting them in order from the highest interest rate to the lowest interest rate. Step number 3, you're going to build a small freedom fund, and you're going to create a monthly budget. So a freedom fund is my version of an emergency fund. I would recommend putting $500 to $1,000 to the side, and that freedom fund is there to prevent you from going into future debt. All right. You can listen to episode 4 to learn more about freedom funds, what I talked about on the last episode. The budget that I just talked about, the budget is going to let you know how much more you can apply towards debt. So you kind of have to have a list of all of your expenses each month, kind of like we did with Juanito. And we were able to look at what his income was and determine how much was going out and how much, that gave us an idea of how much. Don't be stressed about the budget part of this step. The budget is flexible, all right, but it's going to give structure to our process. All right, step number 4, you're going to automate your payments, especially on whichever bills, whichever debts we're not focused on. All right. So one thing that you want to remember here, it is important. It is very important that you continue to make payments on all of your debts, because you don't want those things to go to collection and then, it just gets messy. It becomes nasty. So you still want to make sure that you're paying the minimums on all of your debts. And again, I kind of used this metaphor earlier. Think of debt like a cage with many locks. Every payment is helping to unlock those. It's kind of like a key. Each payment is a key that's helping you unlock those different locks. Step number 5, track your wins. All right. Make sure that you do celebrate your debts when you eliminate one. It's cool. Those small wins are going to create big freedom. No, it's okay to go out and have an extra, go have an extra lunch or dinner, celebrate those moments when you do pay off your debts. But just don't forget that once you pay off the debt, don't just start spending all that money. Don't forget, you want to roll it over, add some extra funds to your next debt. All right, that's the whole purpose of the snowball and the avalanche. It's going to come down the mountain. If you turn around and start walking back up the mountain by going further into debt or spending more each month, you're going to slow down your process. If you've been listening and you're tired of feeling stuck, you're feeling overwhelmed or ashamed of your debt load, I want you to know something. You don't have to do this alone. Me being a financial coach, this is what I do. You kind of got a taste of how I would have treated Juanito, the same way that, you kind of had a picture of Juanito's finances. You'll also want to, I will create that for you as well if you need that. I help clients build personalized debt payoff plans. We can create sustainable budgets, and we can transform your money mindset so that you can finally breathe again, being financially free. If you want help choosing your payoff method, organizing your debts, or building a plan that fits your life, please visit me at unshackledforlife.com. www.unshackledforlife.com. You can book a wake-up call coaching session, download some free resources, and learn more about how coaching can accelerate your journey. Your freedom, your debt freedom is possible, your peace of mind is possible, and the transformation starts with one decision. Thank you for listening today to Unshackled for Life. If this episode helped you, please share it with someone who needs encouragement today. And also remember, debt is temporary, discipline is powerful, freedom is the goal. See you next episode. Unshackled for Life, unlocking prosperity and liberating wealth. Take care.